Hello, welcome to a very special TMS podcast, England against Australia at Edgbaston in 2005. This is a game that resonates with so many people. Everyone seems to know where they were when Steve Harmison took that final wicket. And back in 2015, to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the match, we invited listeners to send in their memories of the game and chatted to some of our team about their recollections of how it all played out. Stand by then for Michael Vaughan, Jim Maxwell and Simon Hughes as we go back to 2005 and that most incredible of finales.
England striving for this last wicket. They've been doing that for a while. Harmison comes up and bowls, and Kasparovich goes back and parries one as he caught down the leg side. There's an appeal for a catch. He's out. England have won. England have won by 2 runs.
Wow, what a finish. What an incredible test match. That is astonishing stuff. And quite fittingly, Steve Harmison takes the winning wicket, and Geraint Jones takes a very good catch down the leg side. What a phenomenal test match.
The noise, the atmosphere, the Australian accents. Jim, you shouldn't have been on. Why were you on? Brilliant commentary, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Peter Baxter was producing the show at the time, and as you know, there's a tradition to have the broadcaster from the team likely to win on at the time that the match finishes. And if you go through the archive, you'll hear Jonathan Agnew, England, Jim Maxwell, or another Australian voice, Australia. But on that occasion, it had got to a point where I don't know whether England had given up in terms of the commentary box, certainly not out on the field.
Spirits were low.
But I think you may have been on before me, and Peter Baxter thought, well, Australia's going to win this.
Yeah.
So I went back on, and as Michael is sitting here now will recall, Lee banged one out to deep cover, and he picked out Gilo right on the boundary, a yard either side. The game's over, and Australia win by a wicket. It didn't happen, and then the next ball down the leg side. Thank goodness we didn't have DRS. That would have ruined one of the greatest moments.
We're glossing over that, Jim. We're glossing over the fact that the hand might be slightly off the bat handle at the time. But it is amazing, and you had to go suddenly, in the blink of an eye, from bracing yourself to commentate on a magnificent Australian win under the circumstances to sounding as elated as you did for an England victory by 2 runs. So well played for that.
Well, you go with the crowd.
Yeah.
Is the way I can review that today. No, you do. That's what all of us enjoy about being at big sporting occasions. And, you know, I've done a lot of cricket, but I've done a lot of other sports, and you just go with the crowd. And it's quite infectious. It takes you up. And
that noise from that stand.
From that
whenever
stand,
I hear that clip, that's what you hear. It's like a wall of noise.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, Jim.
It was a very exciting moment, I have to say, and I was privileged to be in that position. I don't know whether it'll happen again, because I'm sure it'll be a bit more forecastable, and you'll have the chance, Aggers, when it comes around next time.
One day. But there we go.
Thank you very much to Peter Baxter and Test Match Special for having me on for the conclusion of that remarkable game.
It's why England win by 2 runs has got an Australian accent, and poor old Jeff Lawson as well. It's brilliant. It's a lovely story, actually. Thanks, Jim. You can pop off and have some lunch, and that's a flavour of what we're talking about during the next half hour or so. Michael Vaughan is alongside me here. Simon Hughes, sitting to my left, part of the Channel 5 commentary team, of course, has been picking out some moments, I think, Simon, haven't you, of that test match? I mean, it was a remarkable match in so many ways.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I think there are so many moments, actually. And I did a sort of one day when it was a bit raining and I was trying to think of something to do for the summer. I was looking back at that test and compiling a list of the best Ashes moments from history, in a way. And quite a lot of the best Ashes moments from history are in that test match. Obviously, the Freddie Flintoff fantastic over. One of the ones I like, which I love, is Shane Warne's delivery to Andrew Strauss, which he bowled into the rough on the second evening, I think. And it turned so far that Hawkeye actually said it didn't exist as a ball. It was absolutely impossible. It confounded even the computers, never mind Strauss, who walked across outside off stump to let it go, and it bowled him behind his leg stump. It must have turned almost 90 degrees. It was an extraordinary delivery. And then obviously the final moments, the Harmison slower ball on that third evening, and many other things within it were just so kind of epic, really, as was the match.
Brilliant match. And Michael, do you still get a bit of a feeling when you come back here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this ground always is one of special times for the England team. I don't know whether it's the pitch that suit the team, but I'm sure that has an effect. But I think the crowd here at Edgbaston always play a part. You know, whatever the occasion, you always feel that the crowd are right on top of you, they're right behind you. And I think that Test match in 05 was really, I'm involved in it, so I'm just speaking to people who watched the game. You know, someone like Greg James will say that this was the game of 05 that grabbed the nation in terms of cricket. It was that series which, you know, kind of got cricket trendy again, and people started to talk about the game. But it was really 05 Edgbaston which kind of triggered that series onto being the series that it was, because England lose here, it's going to be a potential whitewash. You go 2-0 down against that great Australian team, you don't come back. So I think from everything, I mean, I look back to Steve Harmison's slow ball on that third evening. He never bowls slow balls. I don't know where he bowled it from. He's never bowled one since. So I don't know where that came from, but it worked.
Inspirational.
You look at Ashley Giles. He came into the game under so much pressure. You know, there was talk of him being the wheelie bin, him being just a kind of a vacant member of the side. I think someone had written after Lords that England basically have a team of 10 because Ashley Giles does nothing. So he got the wicket of Ricky Ponting. You know, Ricky's quite unlucky because I caught it. I think it was just before lunch on day 2. Ricky had got 50 odd, played beautifully. I remember him going from 30 to 50. I think in the space of 6 balls he hit 5 fours. Beautiful kind of on drives, pull shots, and I thought, oh, here we go, Ricky Ponting at his best once again. And he got out just before lunch. I think, again, remarkably, Damien Martin, he was run out by me. You know, quite bizarre that I hit the stump. So I'd never done it again, and I don't think I'd done it before that. So there was real key moments in that. So I think the second innings, I look back and think we really panicked. You know, we had a 99-run lead in the first inning, and we panicked, properly panicked. But it also showed me at the end of that Test match, even though we were back in the series, it kind of reminded me of how great a team they were. They'd lost McGrath in the morning. They'd made the wrong call at the toss, yet we'd still only beaten them by 2 runs. And it kind of gave us all a reminder in the dressing room, enjoy this, but by the way, if we want to win this Ashes series, we've got to keep our levels improving because this is one Australian team.
Did you panic partly because of that worn ball to Strauss that turned so far on that second evening? You had that lead, you said, sort of 100 lead, and then Warden produces that sort of miracle delivery. Was that part of the...
Well, it wasn't. I think the more the panic was that we'd been trying to play this expansive, really attacking game as it worked in the first inning, scoring 407 in, I think, 79.2 overs. You know, when you get a 99-run lead after the first inning, really you've got to play it down a gear or two and just play the moment and just bat a little bit of time. We kept on going for the big shots, and it really played into Australia's hand by, I think we were 75 for 6 in the second inning.
And so Freddie was injured as well, wasn't he?
Well, then he batted and he went in his shoulder. Yeah. And I thought he dislocated his shoulder by the way he was on the ground. Then he started hitting the ball with one hand for a while. And then all of a sudden, the adrenaline, or I don't know, maybe his shoulder wasn't as bad as he first thought. And he started chipping the ball. I think his innings actually in the first innings was key to the whole Ashes series because he was a player like all these kind of all-rounders with, the X-Factor character. They need confidence. And in his first innings, his first 25 runs, if you could get the DVD of that first 25, it's the worst 25 runs that you'll ever see anyone score. The ball was edging over the slips. He was playing a duck hook to Brett Lee. I remember he duck hooked the ball and it hit the face of the bat and it went for 6.
And he leading edged Warner, I think, over mid-off, just cleared mid-off as well.
Yeah, his first 20, and then he was away, he started to play some strokes, he got to 50, his confidence rose, got the ball in the hand, and kind of, he was very lucky for me to have as a captain because I mentioned the crowd, but every time I felt the crowd, and there wasn't many moments during that series, but particularly that Test match where I felt the crowd was flat, but every time I felt they were flat, I'd just throw the ball to Freddie Flintoff, and I knew straight away that the crowd would erupt into some kind of songs.
Matt in Cheersley says, my 10-year-old son is proud to tell everyone how the final day of that Test was his christening. I'd been tasked to getting him to sleep when Harmy took the last wicket. The room full of uncles and godfathers erupted and he burst into tears. Incidentally, we're coming to Edgbaston on Sunday for his first ever Test match. Let's go pick our way through this game. If you recall, England batted first, so put into bat. They scored more than 400 runs in that first day. Marcus Trescothick setting the tone.
Trescothick forward, edging down to third man. No one there, 4 runs. Well, they're bowling to this ring field, but no third man.
Trescothick clipping us away, wide of mid-on. And that's going to be 4, although there's a man out there at deep mid-wicket. Certainly England looking to play very positively here against Shane Warne.
Gillespie bowls again. Trescothick is aiming down the ground for 4 with a beautiful drive. That hit the sweet spot. And he's forward and he's driving magnificently through the covers for another 4. Cop that. Oh, 18 from the last over before lunch. 77 to Trescothick on the opening day of a test against the world champions.
It was an
awesome,
extraordinary innings, wasn't it? I can still see him standing up and poof.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like this morning, England lost the toss and they went out to bowl, and within a couple of hours you could see there was a bit of nip. Now on that first morning at Edgbaston 05, within 2 hours you knew the nip wasn't there. You could just see from the way that the players were kind of just leaning forward and the ball was going back down the ground, so mid-on and mid-off were fielding the ball. This morning for the first hour, nothing was going down the ground, so that tells you that the pitch is just doing a little bit more, everything's hitting the outside edge. So in the dressing room I remember sitting there, and within 3 or 4 overs I knew we had a great chance. I could just see from I think Trez played a cover drive. I think it might have been the second over to Brett Lee. He just leant on it. It flew through the covers. And I knew that with the way that the players played, that we had a great chance of posting something, decent to put them under pressure. I never thought we'd hit 407 in 79 overs, but I knew we'd get something near to be able to put them under the pressure that they needed to be under.
One other thing I wondered about that particular game, or that innings, was that the first time that the Merlin bowling machine was properly used? Because I remember seeing some pictures of Strauss batting in the nets, practising coming down the wicket to Merlin, the thing that looks like a washing machine, and hitting it back over the top of the machine, and he then did it in the match. He came down the wicket to Warne early on and bunted him over the top. When did that Merlin bowling machine come in? Earlier than that?
That's a good question.
I think it was around
It was
that
around
sort of
the time. I know that Merlin was basically based at Loughborough.
Yeah.
And I knew that around the time we were so we were getting used to all the different spinners around the world, and Merlin was playing quite a pivotal part in that. And I remember that I can't remember the father and son who actually created Merlin, but they could make Merlin travel. So Merlin would then travel on the road and get in this car and come to
Pryor,
a lot of the venues.
Matt Pryor, I think somebody Pryor, wasn't it? Matthew Pryor, who was a journalist on the Times. Yeah,
I'm not too sure about it. It was probably here, and it was more the intent. You can face Merlin as much as you want, but as long as you have intent, and that was my message throughout the whole week was, look lads, we have to have intent against their bowlers. We've got to look to score. We've got to try and put them on the back foot. And I didn't really worry about it going wrong because we'd done so many things wrong at Lords with the bat. I just wanted the players to free up and try and score as quickly as possible, just to try and see what would happen, and fortunately it worked on day one.
90 from 102 balls, hit 15 fours, 2 sixes. We've got Kevin Peterson, 71 from 76 balls, Andrew Flintoff, 68 from 62 balls, 407 all out in, well, less than 80 overs, 79.2 overs. Martin Stroud was there. He said, my first and only day as an Ashes Test match. I loved watching Trescothick, KP, Freddie smashing the ball all over the place. The atmosphere was like nothing I've ever experienced before. The Barmy Army was in fantastic voice. The chant of the day was, who wants a Kit Kat? To which we all responded, we want a Kit Kat. And it ended up hitting a copper on the helmet. And he wasn't very impressed. So there we go, 407 all out. Australia, the first innings, 308 in reply, with 3 wickets of Flintoff, 3 for Giles, 3 for 78. England again then with that lead of 99. 182 all out, with Shane Warne taking 6 for 46. With Flintoff
the last wicket
73. Yeah, with Simon Jones is 12, absolutely.
And Freddie, I think, hit 9 or 10 sixes in the game, which is an Ashes record as well, which is extraordinary.
He hit 4 in that innings, and he hit 5 in the...
9, wasn't it?
9 sixes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so 182. So Australia set 281 to win then, and they were going well before Andrew Flintoff delivered one of the great overs.
He's on his way. He's there. He bowls to Langer. Oh, he's forward. He's bowled him, has he? He has bowled him. It's got through bat and pad. 3 and 4 balls for Andrew Flintoff, and he's broken through. And he's been given not out. Well, they all think they've got him there. They're all appealing. He's been given not out. And this is the last ball of the over. It's 48 for 1. And Flintoff goes roaring in again. He's there. He bowls to Ponting. Oh, my word, he's caught behind. Is he there? Yes, he is. He's caught behind. A fabulous over. A wonderful over. Has seen off Ricky Ponting after Justin Langer.
Oh, I remember that.
It was fantastic over.
And our commentary box is lower than here.
But it's the noise.
And we were down there on the first floor, and you were right in the game. And Flintoff was bowling from this end. And it's fantastic.
It's the noise of the crowd. It was like I guess
A cauldron, sort of.
a striker scoring the winner in the cup final. It was like one big eruption of the noise. I mean, obviously,
It was not a cricket-sounding crowd.
No,
let's be honest. It
and
was
I
a
don't think
roar.
I don't think you get that here. I think it is more of a, and they're very well behaved and they're very jovial and they're polite to the opposition. But it does feel like at Edgbaston, Trent Bridge, Headingley, you get that kind of football feel to the crowd, which is right behind the England team, and it G's you up. It gets you going.
Chris Sanford says, I vividly remember the Flintoff over. I lived in Ireland at the time, and our daughter was only 1 month old. She was sitting on my knee as I watched that session, and when Flintoff got punter out, I celebrated so loudly that my daughter started crying and filled her nappy. That's a rather unfortunate one. But it was a great over, wasn't it? It was fast. And Flintoff is a sort of man, isn't he, Freddie? He thrives on that, backing that noise, that support, all of that. I mean, I suppose everyone does, really. But when you're running in, you're bowling fast, and it was a quick over, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was quick, but it was more, my worry as well, because, I'd seen the way that Hayden and Langer had played Harmison, played Jones, played Matthew Hoggard. I think they might have faced a couple of overs of Ashley Giles. Nothing was happening. There was nothing happening. There was no swing. There was no bounce. They were just hitting it in the middle of the bat. You felt that, they were going to get to this target quite comfortably. One or not both get big hundreds, see the game home for Australia. And you could tell within a ball that Flintoff had just found his rhythm.
Yeah.
As a bowler, and that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 overs to get the rhythm. But you felt straight away that Fred had got his rhythm, and he'd kind of just gained energy from the crowd. He could sense, and I felt it straight away as a captain, that, as I said before, I threw the ball to Flintoff and said, come on, make something happen. And everyone in the crowd would lift. All the crowd would suddenly start being on the feet, they'd be singing. And then the key wicket of Justin Langer, a bit lucky, the drag on back to the stumps, but those, I think, 4 balls to Ricky Ponting. You can't play
One being
those.
no ball,
You can't play them. Back in with the angle back, and then the away shape and the straight. He plays it quite well, straight back, but there's just enough movement there, and the carry through to Geraint Jones. And I knew straight away. I was there watching, obviously desperately hoping to get Ponting's week, but I just heard the nice little click.
Yeah,
I heard the click. I could feel the outside edge, and away we go. He was such a key wicket, Ponting, because he was in great form at the time.
He played brilliant in the next Test match, didn't he? Chris Brown in Notts says, I remember listening to that Flintoff over. I was on the tractor during harvest time on the farm. My dad wasn't too happy that I'd stopped working, but when I told him Ponting had gone, we all stopped working and listened together to Test Match Special. It must have been quite something to make farmers stop harvest, and he's right. But it was gripping, it was colossal. And on to, I think, I'm glad you picked this, Simon, because I was actually, as a commentator, I was on some quite key moments in this Test match as well. This I will never forget, because the game was in the balance. It was towards the end of the Saturday when Steve Harmison came into bowl to Michael Clarke.
In comes Harmison, and he bowls a slower ball. He's bowled it! What an amazing delivery! That is absolutely stunning. Clarke has been bowled by a loopy, slower ball. It was an extraordinary piece of bowling.
Amazing. To feel that now, the last ball.
Well, I'd taken the extra 8 overs to try and win the game, and up until that last over, I was thinking, I've made the wrong call here. The boys are tired. I shouldn't have really taken them through that 8 over period. Warne and Clarke had smashed. I think they'd smashed about 36 in that 8 over period. I think Shane Warne had lapslocked Giles into the standard about 3 times. I thought, oh no, I've made the wrong call here. And Steve Harmison's never bowled a slow ball before that slow ball, and he's never bowled one since. He really had no idea.
It took everyone by surprise.
No idea. And if you actually look at it, on a replay, it's so obvious.
Yes.
He basically stops in his action and goes, "Oh, Michael, I'm going to bowl you a slower ball. It's going to come out." It comes out the front of the hand, and Clarke just plays across it.
Yeah.
It dips. It's obviously
It was very
well
full,
executed,
wasn't it? And it was a real full, straight up half volley, really.
He retired that ball as soon as he got Clarke out. It was never to be seen again.
It's funny, isn't it, though? Because I love that ball as well, and it's partly because it's one of the most underused balls in Test cricket. You see so many different slower balls and slower bounces and things in one-day games, but in Test cricket they never use them. Batsmen get on top of the bowling. You never see someone come up with something different like that, and it was inspired.
Dear old Harmy, it was one of those, and I'll tell you what also, because it was just a moment of sheer brilliance, wasn't it? I mean, all the coaching and everything else you go through, this was just something off the cuff. Just
no,
spur of the moment.
Absolutely, and you want that from bowlers occasionally, don't you? Just something. I mean, I like the way Mark Wood, obviously not playing in this Test match, but suddenly does a short run, or bowls suddenly one wide of the crease, and it just keeps the batsman thinking all the time. It's nice to see that.
So, to your memories of that Edgbaston Test match 2005, starting with Jamie Harrison.
We were going to watch a cricket final, Huddersfield League cricket final, over in Elland, near Halifax, and we were en route to the final as the last over was being bowled, and listening keenly, and I remember the wicket falling, and three of us in a car on the M62 just going absolutely radio rental, bonkers, horns going off, the lot. And I remember some peculiar looks from the other lanes looking at us, obviously not listening to the cricket also, but amazing.
On holiday in Sicily, one of those old mobile phones, it froze 4 runs to win, and it took me 40 minutes to finally get the news that England had won. I almost fell over, I was so relieved.
I live about a mile from Edgbaston County Ground, and I often try and get to the first day of a test match against Australia. I've done so since I was about 5 or 6 years old when my dad took me. Anyway, I tend to listen mainly to Test Match Special to follow my cricket. 10 years ago, I'd been doing this in Birmingham, going past the county ground, and then for the last couple of days, I was in Scotland on the island of Lewis, visiting my wife's Scottish heritage relations. And for me, this most significant moment was at the end when Flintoff goes up to Brett Lee to commiserate, console, whatever it was it did. I thought it summed up sportsmanship to a T. And surrounded by Scots, I said later to one of my wife's cousins, I bet it's one of the only times you support England, isn't it, when we play Australia at cricket? Just to be met by a very terse no.
I remember that test really well because I was driving with my mum, my dad and my brother, and we'd been visiting York for the day, and we were on our way back to my mum and dad's house in Ilkley. And my mum is from York, she's a proper Yorkshire woman, so she was really pessimistic. Oh, they're going to screw it up, oh, they might as well give them the Ashes. They're stupid, just stupid, this kind of thing. Basically, she talks like Geoffrey Boycott. So she was getting increasingly pessimistic as Australia was slowly ticking the runs over. And in fairness, my brother and I in the backseat were also getting a bit nervous. And then suddenly, Kasparovich just nicked one, and it was absolutely fantastic, you know. My mum just piped down. I think she almost wanted England to lose, but we were just celebrating and just couldn't get back to Oakley quick enough so we could actually have a look at that final ball. And then there was all the whole Freddie Flintoff business, having that quiet word to Brett Lee. It was amazing. And my mum is increasingly miserable about this series as well. But yeah, amazing memories for us.
Thanks to those. Jamie Harrison, Richard in Golders Green. Here's a fellow with the old-fashioned phone that blew up somewhere overseas. He had to wait 20 minutes to hear me. Roy Peters and then Simon Thake from Ilkley there at the end. Here's a nice one from Michael Perrin, who says, I was plying my trade as a shelf stacker in the local South Shields branch of a popular supermarket chain in my teenage years. I went AWOL from the chilled provisions aisle, which was my station, to join 6 or 7 AWOL fathers/husbands in the electrical aisle, gathered round a 16-inch portable tuned into the cricket on mute. We never gave up hope, and after we confirmed the finger had been raised for the 10th time that innings, we embraced as brothers. Then I went back to stacking cheese. Isn't that nice? Simon, all this, and you know, we're not going to fall out with our friends next door. Terrestrial telly had a part to play, didn't it?
Well, it did, and because people could latch onto it as the game was unfolding, and when it gets exciting, the whole country can
enormous audiences.
Can enjoy it.
I mean, there were 7 million watching.
Not only that, but I mean, not only the audiences in Britain, but. And in fact, it went up to 9 million in the end. But also, we got, on Channel 4 at the time, we got emails from people saying, I'm following this in the Malaysian jungle on a laptop and the Navy out at sea. So, you know, there were people all over the world who'd heard about it. The grapevine worked very well. And by the end of the series, you know, there were 9-10 million people watching it.
Matthew Walker says, I had an under-16 game at 9 o'clock in the morning. We bowled them out for 60. Not sure I've bowled so well in my life. Knocked off the runs in 6 overs and managed to get back to the clubhouse eating microwave chips, watching the rest of the match. Let's get back to your memories then, starting with Mark Etherington.
I don't remember very much about the first 2 days, but I remember quite a lot about the Saturday because I was getting married that day. And quite often on wedding days, the morning is quite, certainly for the groom anyway, is quite relaxed. So I sort of sat around and watched, of course it was on terrestrial TV, so I was watching it all morning. And then somewhat unwillingly had to drag myself away from the TV to go and get married. So I did that, and then of course was completely occupied for the rest of the day. But luckily the vicar who was conducting the service was a big cricket fan, so he would every so often keep us posted of which Australian wicket had fallen, and kept the whole congregation sort of up to speed. And then of course the Sunday, well, I woke up as a husband for the first time, and the cricket was so gripping I couldn't possibly not watch it. So my first morning as a married man was spent watching that incredible morning's cricket, and that will stay with me for absolutely ever, as will my wife's reaction, but that's another story.
Simon Brewer. I was with friends, we were in the countryside, we were enthralled as we had been for the previous few days, and as the unfolding drama took place we became more and more convinced that it was going to be Australia's hour and day, and so we went to the garden unable to watch any more of it, and left one of the 13-year-old sons in the garden to shout out developments as they unfolded to us sitting in deck chairs. And as the final climactic moments took place, he bellowed out that England had found that last wicket, and we rushed in disbelief and promptly jumped and danced around like teenagers, exalting the triumph and the glorious moment of that summer.
Hi TMS, Tim from Manchester here. I was lucky enough to be at the grounds that day in the City End. Such a tense morning, filled with hope and eventually despair, and then euphoria. I can't remember a time I've experienced more euphoria than when the last wicket fell. It was about 2 minutes of jumping up and down, screaming, shouting, everything. It was just amazing.
Hi, my name's Simon, I'm 34, I live in Worthing, and these are my memories of the Edgbaston Test match 10 years ago. I just started going out with my girlfriend that summer, and it was probably the first time I've been around her parents' house. We were around her parents' house for the weekend. They live up in Suffolk, and none of them were into cricket at all. So it was suggested that my girlfriend and I go for a walk on the Sunday morning, and I remember waking up, it was a nice sunny day, and it was going to be pretty hard for me to say, no, I just want to stay in and watch cricket all morning, even though that's clearly what I would prefer to do. So we set off for a walk about 10 a.m, and there I was anxiously hoping it wasn't going to be too long so I could get back and watch the conclusion of the test. But as there was only 2 wickets to go, I thought, well, it's pretty much in the bag. And I remember getting in the car, driving back, and seeing that Australia had scored quite a lot of runs, and things were getting a bit tight. I think fortunately Shane Warne's wicket fell when we were in the car back to her parents' house. There I was feeling a little bit more hopeful that things were going to turn out okay. But I remember getting back and watching the conclusion with my girlfriend in her parents' lounge, and obviously things were getting very, very tense. And then ultimately I remember us leaping round the room in celebration when Kasparovic's wicket finally fell. And that was the start of a great summer, and obviously something special for us because 10 years later we've married and got a couple of kids, so all round it was a good result in the end.
Lovely memories. They work rather well, don't they, recording like that? Thanks very much indeed for everyone who's taken part in that. Sorry we couldn't play them all, but there's some lovely, lovely memories indeed of a very special game. Tom in Lancashire was driving to Cornwall for a family holiday. Says I was 12 at the time when the final wicket fell. My dad started celebrating wildly and nearly swerved into a lorry on the inside lane whilst cars all around were sounding their horns. Whether this was down to his driving or at that given moment there was an abundance of cricket fans on the M6, we will never know, but it certainly was one of those moments. I can imagine what the relief must have been like that 10 years ago, which I described, first of all, so let's get you on this, because you did you've done the videos and so on. I described today as rather our sort of cricket supporters' comfort blanket. Edgbaston 2005, when things are going badly wrong, we say, but don't forget Edgbaston 2005. Yeah, we got. I
occasionally watch the DVD of that last day and sort of wonder what's going to happen. I still can't quite believe the ending in a way.
Yeah.
And actually, it's interesting, all these recounts of it mentioning family. So it brought a lot of people together, didn't it?
Yeah.
And all these memories are mostly quite happy ones, with people getting married afterwards, and it does seem to sort of have a very bonding sort of effect, this memory.
It'd be quite interesting, and I don't want to say this in a winding up sort of way, but we haven't had any Australian reaction as to how they were, because they'd have been,
Well, ironically,
they'd have been in bed.
Ironically, Jim Maxwell, of course, we have here, who was doing the radio commentary, and the final words of the TV commentary were Richie Benaud.
Were they?
And in actual fact, it's one of the most famous sort of, epic bits of commentary, because it's just 2 words. As the ball goes down the leg side, he just shouts, "Jones! Bowden!" Billy Bowden, the umpire, giving it out, and that's really all that needed to be said. After that, it was the pictures took over with Varney virtually kissing Freddie, I think, weren't you, at the end, or the other way around? Or
after
Freddie was lifting
Flintoff,
you up.
of course, had gone to see Brett Lee, of course.
Well, Steve Harmison went to see Brett Lee first, but Steve Harmison wasn't quite camera savvy.
But he wasn't there long enough.
No, you just kind of give him a shake hand, pat on the back, but then Freddie was going everywhere, as we all were. You don't really know what to do. You just kind of go with the emotions, and I think probably being out in the middle, you're under more control because you can control a little bit of what's going to happen. I mean, I remember being at Trent Bridge in 2013 for that game, when Brad Haddon looked like he was going to win the game for Australia, and I hated watching, I hated commentating because you can't control anything. When you're down in the mix of it, you're getting nervous, and you think, particularly when Simon dropped that catch at third man, I thought the moment a guy, I always knew would get a moment.
Not an easy catch, was it, to be fair?
No, it wasn't. It's always difficult at third man. You don't expect the ball to come down to you, but it was a catch which he probably would have taken more often than not. And I thought that was it. I thought, you don't get that many moments, 12 runs to win, you get that chance, drop it. And then the way that the ball was inside edging past the stumps, and then the odd ball was, I remember hitting footholes and that flying over Geraint Jones's head down the leg side for 4. Then there was an edge, I think, through the slips for 4. And I just started thinking, well, maybe this is not meant to be. We've played well for 4 days, and that's all I ever was concerned. I was upset at Lords because I didn't think we'd played to the potential of what we'd shown for a year and a half. Edgbaston, I'd felt, it'd be disappointed to lose, but at least we've played. At least we've played a decent game of cricket. So I was proud of the team in a way, but the emotions of knowing that you're back in the series, it takes a while to be back in that dressing room to look around and go, wait a minute, we've won it.
Yeah.
We're 1-1 with 3 to play. It's just from where we were a week ago at Lords to think that we're now back in this series was a great feeling.
What about, during that last bit when it looked like Australia were going to win, and you said there was the edges and the balls down the leg side for 4 byes and so on, presumably, you looked calm on the outside, certainly on camera. You looked as if you were fairly sort of phlegmatic, but what were you feeling like inside?
No, I was pretty calm because I felt that the team were delivering exactly what we were trying to deliver. I only used to fret a little bit as a captain when I felt that they weren't delivering a plan. When the plan wasn't quite being delivered to what we've talked about, or the bowlers were getting a bit clever and a bit funky in terms of their own figures, and that wasn't happening. I think, having the fielders out on the edge was purely to take the game as deep as possible. It was to try and make sure that we had as many balls. We only need 1 wicket. So I didn't understand. It was, get the field in. Why would I bring the field in to allow Brett Lee to smack a 4? That's 4 runs, That might have just been a 1, so we get another ball at Michael Kaspovic. And that's all I kept on saying to myself. Look, just let's have as many balls as we possibly can at this pair. And I actually looked at Australia when they were needing 60, 70, then 60, then 50. They were just swinging the bat. They didn't have a care in the world. They didn't think they could win at that stage. As soon as it got to under 30, I felt they started to think about it.
The game changes then.
Yeah, it does. It becomes harder for them as much as it's hard for us. It becomes a lot harder for the batting team when they look at that scoreboard and the Aussie crowd. And there's a big section in the far stand singing every single run all the way down. And when it started to get to within 20, you could see there was more chatting between Kaspovic and Brett Lee in the middle. Before that, they weren't really talking. They were just hitting it and trying to hit a few to the boundary. It was going to the boundary. And then I kept on looking and thinking, wait a minute, they're thinking as well. As much as we're thinking very hard and getting a little bit worried that we might lose, I think they're thinking of winning as well, which can always be, tail enders when they start to think it's a bit of a concern.
It's funny actually because there was a sort of tension in the commentary as well. I remember I was in the truck actually just out the back of the stand with the Channel 4 VT operators, and we knew it was the last year of the Channel 4 contract. It was the last year probably of Test cricket on terrestrial TV. We all wanted it to be a great series, and we could see this whole potential climax just slipping away with Australia winning, going 2-0 up, and you could see, as Michael said, probably a fairly straightforward Australian victory of the series afterwards. So we were all, there was about 25 of us in that big truck out the back there, the VT, the guys manning the replay angles and a couple of graphics people and me and 1 or 2 others. We're all sitting there kind of, come on England, like this, and you could feel the atmosphere, the excitement gradually deflating as Australia got, and they kept looking at me as the only person who'd played any sort of decent cricket, going, "Oh, can we still win this?" And until 10 to win, I said yes. We are going to still win this game. And then with 10 to win, I thought, no chance. And when I saw Steve Harmison bowl that full toss to Brett Lee with 4 to win, and he smacked it right in the middle of the bat, couldn't have hit it any better, like a tracer, straight to Simon Jones. And I talked to Simon Jones about this recently, because he's done a nice book, actually, looking back at this series. And he said, basically, a foot either side, a yard either side, it was 4, end of the game. And he said, actually, when he fielded it as well, he was kind of almost thinking, God, if I throw the ball over the keeper's head, it's overthrows and I've given the game away. But somehow, he said, I managed to pick it up cleanly, didn't bobble through my legs or anything, and he threw it cleanly into the keeper. And the batsman swapped ends just for a single, and then Casper threw it out.
Kate says, where are we? Very happy memories of all this. My husband and I were on holiday in Cornwall, sitting on the cliffs by a ruined engine house at Botallack Tin Mine. I think that's how you call it. Is it Botallack or Botallack? Anyway, Botallack probably. Huddled round our old transistor radio as the events unfolded. Everyone that passed on the coast path wanted to know the latest score. That engine house has been known as Flintoff Tower ever since. Chris Gadd, here we go, some Australians, here we go, oh dear, I've just read the last line now. Chris Gadd was living in Queensland at the time, so I assumed he was an Australian, and I sat up all through the night to watch the game. I couldn't sleep afterwards, and instead was at work early to ask my Aussie workmates if they'd seen the cricket. Proud to be a Pom that day. Okay, well, I thought you were an Australian. I saw the word Queensland there, but never mind. But it must have been amazing for Australians to be listening to, actually, to that match. And because they must like us.
Well, it wasn't on Channel 9, was it?
I'm not too sure, but if you actually, what
it was on a satellite channel, so actually not a lot of Australians couldn't see it. But Jim's just reminded me.
SBS.
Yeah, SBS,
which is another publicly funded broadcast,
yes.
Because
Channel 9 thought it wasn't going to be much of a series, didn't they?
The 2 series in a row that 9 didn't take.
And that's their main.
So the government came in and put the money up. The ABC didn't want to do it, and it was on SBS. Yes. So they got
audience for them.
They got serious BBC type coverage in a way because there are hardly any ads.
Robin Bristol says, I'd left a desk job at a bank after 7 years and began a stint as a delivery driver around South Wales in the summer of 2005. I listened to as much of the 2005 Ashes as I could on long wave. Beautiful countryside, sunny days in TMS on the radio. What more could you possibly want? Well, the finale of the Edgbaston Test was possibly the most enjoyable sporting moment of my life, tainted only by the fact that I just entered the Brindgless Tunnel? I'm getting tested by some Welsh pronunciations here. At the very moment that Harmison stepped up and won it. So I missed a very famous moment of live sporting commentary, because of course the radio would have gone off. But I didn't care. He said England had won.
I wonder how many people were supposed to go to church that Sunday and didn't. Because it was, I mean, sporting notoriety is so conditional on when it happens.
Yes.
Don't do anything on a Friday morning because no one's going to be watching. But if it's Sunday morning or Saturday night, Sunday morning's a great time for a climax because it started at, I think actually play might have started at 10:30 that summer, possibly, because Channel 4 used to bring their times forward to start earlier so we could get the Simpsons in at 6, which is slightly ludicrous, but anyway. So, people who were perhaps fancying going to church or doing whatever they do on Sunday morning might have sort of locked into the cricket at 10:15 and see how it goes. And the whole morning was taken up, and probably most of the afternoon as well, celebrating.
I'm pretty sure we've had emails in the past from vicars who have owned up to the fact that they had a radio up their cassock and a bit of an earpiece.
Organists, definitely. We're listening to you, actually. Yeah. Had that going on in the organ loft.
Jim in Leamington Spa says, I'd recently moved to an old Victorian property in need of renovation. When England took the final wicket on the Sunday morning to win, I jumped in the air, my head hit the light shade above, and a huge dust cloud gently billowed out, filling the whole room. There we go. See, we love this match, Jim, don't we? Because we won, after all.
Well, it was the remaking of the Ashes,
yes.
Wasn't it?
Do Australians? I mean, do you look at it with as much affection as we do?
Yeah, we do. Well, look, this is hard to say. There's a period there, obviously, where Australia was winning with so much formality in all these matches. Even the newspapers were starting to get bored with writing about it because there wasn't anything to write about. The same old 11 was playing all the time. The same old results were going around. So it needed a defeat to get things going properly. But it was the greatest injection spurt for English cricket you had for years, surely, that game, Michael, winning that game for England.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing in it, you don't really get a feel. You get an idea, with the press coverage and obviously the crowds and the lockout of Old Trafford and all the 10,000 that couldn't get into to watch that final day.
That queue outside Old Trafford on that last day trying to get in was amazing.
But it's probably around now that the last 2 years when I've been involved in junior cricket, going around to watch my little lad play in a lot of the junior under 9s, 10s, 11s, and the amount of parents that come up to me and said, you realise that my young Johnny's playing because of. The only reason that we got Johnny into cricket was because we all watched in 05. And I think Glenn McGrath just last week said that it's the greatest series that he's ever played in. You think of how many Ashes series he won, how many series he won, to think that he still cast, even though he lost, that 2005 the series was the best that he was to be involved in.
And he missed 2 of the games as well.
Absolutely. And Shane Warne says exactly the same. And it's more the game was sold. I think, we're delighted we won. I got the chance to lift up the urn, but I think it's the fact that the game of cricket was sold. And so many kids got into cricket because of the series, and so many people who didn't necessarily want to watch cricket started to watch cricket because it was being talked about and it was played in the right kind of spirit.
Will from Bradford was on his way by car for a family holiday up north. It involved a 2-hour ferry trip. The Scots called drizzly damp weather dreech, which I didn't know, and that's probably not very well pronounced. And it was sufficiently dreech to keep everyone in their cars, waiting on the quayside prior to boarding the ferry. Radio reception wasn't the best, but huddled in our car, we were just able to make out that Australia were inching closer to victory. With reception coming and going, the tension became unbearable, and for a split second we feared Kasparovich had hooked Australia to victory. Then what relief! We knew immediately that our prayers had been answered as occupants of many other cars simultaneously launched themselves onto the quayside for a shared mass jig of delight. Double whiskies on the ferry kept the party spirit going. Well done, radio. And TMS for bringing us all together. What a lovely memory that is. Dreech. Do you think I pronounced that right? I've given a few testers. There's Dreek.
They call it Hossing.
Oh, we've got a Scottish producer.
And he says it's right, does he?
Dreek.
Dreek. I mean, of course, that last wicket was a sort of a moment in itself, because we've alluded to it briefly, that it was given out by Billy Bowden, a Kiwi.
Yes.
So that was another bit of joy for the English, that a Kiwi had given an Australian out. But also that when I was in the truck, probably about 7 minutes after all the euphoria had died down, one of the videotape operators said, Simon, can you just look at this dismissal again? Because I think it doesn't look out. And we looked at it in very, very slow motion, and the hand was just off the bat
it would be given
when the glove had been brushed. So it would have, if Australia had had a review, which they may not have, if they'd had a review, they could have reviewed it and it would have been given not out.
Do you watch it, Michael? Do you still look back at it?
Only because it's been replayed recently, because of the 10 years. I'd not really seen it up until probably a month and a half ago. I think it was on Sky, the whole Ashes series, and I think there was a 2-hour show, and my daughter wanted to see it. She says, come on, let's watch it. And she actually looked at me and she said, I didn't realise you played that much.
They put you back in your place, don't they, these kids? Now, the last email I'm going to read, Sam in London says, I watched the finale of the Edgbaston Test with my granddad. We were on the phone to each other, watching it on separate TV screens 150 miles apart. We shared the terror and the joy of that last hour of play together. He passed away not long after. He was my role model, my hero, and most importantly, my cricket coach. And I'll forever associate that test with him. That's a nice way for it to finish.
England striving for this last wicket. They've been doing that for a while. Harmison comes up and bowls, and Kasparovich goes back and parries one as he caught down the leg side. There's an appeal for a catch. He's out. England have won. England have won by 2 runs.
Wow, what a finish. What an incredible test match. That is astonishing stuff. And quite fittingly, Steve Harmison takes the winning wicket, and Geraint Jones takes a very good catch down the leg side. What a phenomenal test match.
Amazing finish. Billy Bowden waited for a moment, and the England players are surrounding themselves and slapping each other on the back. Flintoff came over and shook Brett Lee's hand.
Well, it really is so special going back and hearing your memories of what that game meant to you and where you followed it.